Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Really glad to have this young lady back. She, of course, a U.S. Senator from the great state of Tennessee. It is Marsha Blackburn. Marsha, how are you? Good to see you again.
I am doing great and so happy to join you. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you. I saw this great picture with you and Pete Hegseth the other day. I think it was on X. And I just thought that was great. It sounds like some who are holding out a little bit might be coming around. How do you feel about him becoming the defense secretary?
He is going to be an incredible defense secretary. He's going to make people come back to the office and go to work. He will make certain that, the Pentagon has failed their audit the last 7 years in a row.
Crazy.
And they cannot find $824 billion. And I think Pete Hegseth is going to go in there and say, you're not leaving till you find the money.
Good.
And he will focus on 21st century warfare. We've got people in that Pentagon that have been there for 30 years. They're supporting programs that have outlived their usefulness. And we need to make certain that when it comes to AI, when it comes to quantum computing, when it comes to Space Force, that we are leading the way and that we don't let China lead the way.
And that's, of course, that's a perfect perspective. Senator, how does it get to the point to where you lose billions of dollars like that? You just don't know. You can't account for it. If I lost $5, this is who I am. I'd be pretty upset. So how do you lose billions of dollars? And why was there no oversight? Is it a failure of the executive branch as a whole that this is allowed to happen?
It is something that has become customary, I believe. The Pentagon has never brought themselves under one accounting system. I think there are like 17 different accounting systems that exist within the Pentagon. And everybody kind of does things their way. There are a lot of credit cards that are there in the purchasing department. There are so many things that could be cleaned up to save money. And then put that money into what the warfighter needs to carry out their mission. And that's what Pete Hegseth will do. That's what Donald Trump is going to do. And I think it is time. People are tired of seeing taxpayer money wasted. They're tired of hearing people that get a contract with the Pentagon and it's for some piece of equipment that you would go to Home Depot and buy for $50, and the Pentagon is paying $500 or $1,000 for that piece of equipment. So there's a new day coming, and I am looking forward to what President Donald Trump is going to do.
Blackburn.senate.gov. Go and follow U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn, Republican, great state of Tennessee. I had Rich McCormick on yesterday, a representative from Georgia, also, of course, a Marine, and he did a speech on Friday just laying out $36 trillion in debt is not okay. We're paying $1 trillion a year just in interest to that debt. So in comes the DOGE, in comes the Department of Governmental Efficiency, and Elon Musk, who took over Twitter, made it X, and got rid of 80% of the workforce. Can you cut that deeply into government waste and government, garbage that we don't even know that we're paying for? And can you make it more efficient on a fast track? Because Trump's only got 4 years. We'll see what happens after that. Can you do it quickly?
Of course you can. And DOGE is going to give us recommendations, and Congress is going to have to take that action and put it into statute. That is why I have filed the DOGE Acts, and it calls for 1%, 2%, and 5% across the board spending cuts into that baseline. Of course, the 1% cut is called the penny plan. Anybody can save a penny on a dollar. It also calls for freezing federal hiring and federal salaries. This way, you put a cap on federal employment, and you can begin to remove positions as people retire out. And Joe, you've got about 80,000 federal workers each year that retire out. The third thing is to put in place a merit-based promotion system for work in the federal government. Right now, people are paid by how long they've been on the payroll. So let's turn this to merit and how you do the job and require people to stop doing remote work and go to the office, earn that paycheck. The other thing that we are working to do is to move federal agencies outside of D.C. And this puts in place a study to look at taking those non-defense, non-national security agencies and moving them across the country.
What would that help, do you think? I mean, just from getting out of D.C. would be great because you get away from the swamp. But why would it be more efficient, do you think, if you moved it out of Washington, D.C.?
Well, let's say if you took the Department of Agriculture and put it into Kansas.
Oh, where the agriculture is. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
Right. It really would. And run things with field offices from people who actually know what it is to get on a tractor or to plant a crop or to have a garden, rather than people who have never worked in agriculture that are over at the U.S. Department of Agriculture and have been there for 30 years. And they are just looking at things on screens and Googling it and have zero practical experience.
And here's the thing, you're making too much sense, but I think in this next administration, you can make more sense, and it's okay. It's Senator Marsha Blackburn. You had Vivek Ramaswamy on your show the other day, your podcast called Unmuted, and he's just a sharp guy. I've known Vivek for a few years now. Young, he's a billionaire, so extremely successful. He's very, very smart, and you can't be a billionaire without running your businesses efficiently. He's going to be a big help, isn't he?
I think that he is, and he and I have talked, and we've actually done some things together during the campaign season to lead to DOGE and my DOGE Acts, which give those foundational elements that we need to take an action on in order to get DOGE rolling along and be able to see the benefit of some of these actions.
I've heard some numbers, and you alluded to this a little while ago, that would suggest 90% plus of some departments don't go to work at all. Is it really that high? And how is that possible years after the pandemic is over?
Yeah, right now, only 6% of the federal workforce shows up 5 days a week.
Stop it. 6%?
Yeah.
How did we get there? How is that allowed? Who's turning a blind eye? Or were they incentivized to not go back to work?
Well, you've got these federal employee unions, which spend your taxpayer money lobbying the federal government.
Come on.
It's crazy. And what we want to do is say your job is to be of service to the American people, because this is a government of, by, and for the people of this country. We need to flip this. This has gotten out of control, and here's a great example, Joe. You and I know a lot of veterans.
Yes.
They depend on the VA for service and benefits. Right now, guess how large the VA casework backlog is for health care and benefits from the VA.
I really would have no guess.
1 million cases.
Oh, my Lord. These people need help. Marsha, they got to get in. That's crazy.
This is why Donald Trump is putting outsiders inside the box so they can fix some of these things. When you've got the people that work for VA healthcare for a 10-day pay period, they only have to work in person 5 days. And if they're working for VA benefits, they're working in person only 2 days. 2 days.
Wow. That's sick.
Oh, yeah. This is the kind of thing that you say, this is absolutely ridiculous. People need to show up. They need to do their job. And it is why we need to make certain that the taxpayers' money is being well spent on programs that are going to be useful and helpful to the American people.
Let me ask you this, because I've interviewed President Trump like 14 times. I went to the White House when he was the president, and we talked a lot about the VA because that was really important to him. Yes. And he thought it was crazy that he wasn't allowed to fire people, so he went ahead and fired 6,000 people. He also tried to increase and make better the technology there. Was it through a regression after he left office? Why is the VA falling back on its old system? Back in the day, people weren't getting any help. The VA was writing down that they did get seen when they didn't. People in Phoenix were dying because they never got to see a doctor. Are we regressing back to something like that? Because I know President Trump and you worked very hard to make it more efficient and make it better.
Indeed, we did. And the case backlog was almost, I mean, it was a few thousand
Yeah,
cases. And now it's up over 1 million cases. And President Trump put a lot of focus and energy on correcting the VA. And now, under the Biden administration, and with the passage of the PACT Act, and with people not going to work in person, look at
crazy.
what you've got is a case backlog that is 1 million cases.
It's got to be fixed, and I know that you're going to be heading the charge to fix that. It's Senator Marsha Blackburn. Go and check out where can we get the Unmuted, your podcast? Where can we get that?
You can find it on Instagram and Facebook, and then, of course, blackburn.senate.gov.
All right, make sure you go there and check it out. I've got to ask you a little bit more about the DOGE acts. You mentioned baseline budgeting before. Baseline budgeting, in my understanding, is about 8% per year. So you're looking to cut that back by 2.5%, maybe even more than that. Marsha, can't we pass some sort of a bill, a law, an act, or something that would say you can't have baseline budgeting higher than inflation? The cost of living for the federal government goes up by 8 when it goes up for me by 20%, and inflation's killing the regular American. Why does the government get to just have this baseline thing that doesn't go away? Why not actually year by year do a budget, which hasn't been done in a long time? We keep on doing continuing resolutions. Do a budget that actually meets the needs of the government, not an automatic increase.
Well, and what I've supported and the legislation I have pushed for is zero-based budgeting.
Yes,
Not
thank you.
baseline, zero-based. And see, there are some things structurally. If we had a balanced budget amendment, which I support, and that balanced budget amendment has to say balance it with no new taxes.
Yes.
And then if you had zero-based budgeting, where you do like every business and you say, okay, these are our needs, and you start from zero, not from some predetermined baseline that was put in place because you got X amount last year.
Right.
Maybe you were in a growth phase. Maybe you had capital that needed to be expended for equipment.
Right.
But maybe you don't have that. It moves to maintenance the next year. So you need to be at a zero-based model. And here's another thing, Joe. If Marsha had her magic wand, and this is something I push with the budget committee, is go to a 2-year budget cycle. So you budget for 2 years. That allows you to budget in year 1 and do oversight in year 2.
Yes.
Then the cycle begins with a new Congress. You do a budget in year 1 and you do oversight in year 2.
That seems to make sense. Why can't we do that?
You know what? We've got the 74 Budget Act, 1974 Budget Act.
Right.
We function under, and getting 60 votes to move to cloture on those measures, it takes a little work.
Well, I know that you're willing to do the work. It's Marsha Blackburn, U.S. Senator, great state of Tennessee. We love having you on. Unmuted is the podcast. Go and find it everywhere. Let's talk about the border in the time we have remaining. The border crisis, it didn't have to be a crisis. I still don't know why Biden and Harris and Obama and everybody wants to open the border. It doesn't make sense to me, other than maybe they thought they were going to get a bunch of Democrat votes down the line if they can give them amnesty. But now that we've got Trump coming back in and the strength and force that you have and others like you in the Senate and the House, we're going to close the border on day one. The problem is you've got millions and millions of people here illegally, and you've got people like the Denver mayor and the governor of California and Illinois and others who are saying, we're not going to help. In fact, they almost sound like they're going to aid and abet people, which is against the law, to get away from federal law enforcement and people like Tom Homan. So you've got a bill that you're doing called the CLEAR Act. Does this give the power to law enforcement to do the job, even if the governor or the county executive says don't do it?
Yes, indeed it does. And we had a hearing in Judiciary Committee today. And I talked about the CLEAR Act in that committee because everybody agrees that criminal illegal aliens should be deported. My bill is really straightforward. For local law enforcement, if they apprehend someone that is in the country illegally, they can detain that individual. They call ICE. ICE has to deport that individual. Then they have to pay local law enforcement back every penny they have spent. in apprehending, detaining, prosecuting that criminal, illegal alien. But everybody says they should go. So passing the CLEAR Act, which puts that in place, plus says if you are a sanctuary city and you are refusing to cooperate with federal law enforcement and you're refusing to abide by U.S. law, you don't get any money from the Department of Justice.
Good.
That
Yeah.
means sanctuary cities would not get a dime of taxpayer money. So this is common sense. We are pushing it forward. We would love to see it included in the year-end package. If it's not, then in January at Judiciary Committee, it is one of the first bills we're going to bring up.
In the last minute that we have, Marsha, thanks for all the time. I always appreciate you coming on. Can you tell me your personal thoughts and maybe thoughts as a senator as well? When you hear the mayor of Denver say that, or when you hear Gavin Newsom say it, or J.B. Pritzker say it, when they say we're not going to help, it almost feels like they're going to get in the way. If they get in the way, they're breaking the law. I don't think they'll go that far. But when they say we're not going to help after accusing you guys in the federal government of not doing your job on the border, just what are your thoughts on that when you hear that?
Well, that is where the Department of Justice and Homeland Security, and I think Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem will have a little bit to say about that.
Well, I think so as well. But I don't know, is there anything on the books that would say, okay, Denver mayor, you're protesting in front of where we're going to go? Because he said he's going to protest and he's willing to be arrested. Do you take him away in handcuffs? What do you do?
And we will leave that to the Department of Justice to tend to. We certainly have provisions in there that support U.S. law. And as I said, this is one of the reasons to support local law enforcement in these endeavors that we need to pass the CLEAR Act, because it strengthens the hand of local law enforcement and protects them as they apprehend, detain, and deport.
I appreciate you coming on. Marsha, have a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I can't wait for the next session to start and for the business of the American people to get done again. Thank you so much.
Got it. Take care.
All right, we're back after this. Stay right here. Amazing.